how to find the 1% line on your skincare ingredient labels. Today, we're going to discuss why this is a catch-22, why it's so hard, why they're allowed to not be labeled, but how you can sort of figure it out by using your brain and maybe even your nose. So, skincare labels. We've spoken about them a lot. It's important not just to look at the front that makes a bunch of claims, but to turn those packages around and actually see what the ingredients are. But just as important as the ingredients themselves are the concentrations. How much of the active ingredient is in here? How much of the good ingredients versus the filler ingredients are taking up this product, so that you know how it's going to work on your skin and whether or not it's worth your money. So, ingredients lists are listed in the order of concentration, meaning that the highest amount of something is at the top, which should mean that the lowest amount of something is at the bottom, correct? That doesn't actually hold true. And the reason why is because of something called the 1% line. This 1% line is not actually on the bottle itself. It's a secret line that cosmetic manufacturers do not have to tell you about. But I want to tell you how I go about trying to decipher them and trying to figure out what they are. So first off, why are companies allowed to have this magical 1% line and why isn't it listed? Essentially, underneath the 1% line, companies can put ingredients in any order they want. That means a product could be 90% water, 99% water, but all of the active ingredients, actives, or any of the special claims could be under that 1% line. They could put them in any order, including fragrances, they can put in preservatives, they can put in other fillers, other key ingredients, or blends, but they don't have to tell you. And the reason why is called trade secret protection. Essentially, these cosmetic companies put a lot of work into making their products, and they don't want someone to just be able to rip them off blindly. So this 1% line means that they don't have to explain what percentages of these things go in. So they can keep it a secret, and they can use this to differentiate their product. Now, there is, of course, a catch to that. There are some experiments that scientists and labs are actually paid to do to reverse engineer products, which is actually really fun. But we're not going to get into that today. We are, however, going to look at a product from The Ordinary as well as from Olay Henriksen, and we are going to explore these ingredients lists together and try to find out where that 1% line is. So, since there is no literal line, how do we do this? You start by looking if there's any active ingredients. This product happens to have AHA at 30% and BHA at 2%, so this gives us a big hint. This product, however, does not. Something else you can look for is active ingredient. It might say Salicylic Acid. You notice it's always under 2%. That kind of gives you a hint, and it's required by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to be listed on there. But when it comes to these other things, there are a couple things. When it comes to these other ingredients, there are a few that I look for. If you see specific preservatives, if you see different kind of filler ingredients, or really expensive products, really expensive actives that you know they could not afford to sell this product at such a cheap price if they used a high amount, that's kind of where you find this 1%. But of course, it also depends on the product. If one is more of a jelly texture and one is a little bit more creamy, or if one is a complete lotion, you can expect some of the more gelling ingredients to be higher up in the list in that more lotiony product. Whereas with some of the more liquidy products, you can expect it to be more watery when it comes to the ingredients. So the preservatives that I usually look for are phenoxyethanol. Phenoxyethanol has replaced a lot of parabens. You could look for parabens. Look for sometimes fragrances. There may be certain extracts, but sometimes extracts can be at higher amounts. And again, this is going to change for each product. But let's actually dig into these two and try to decipher what's in them. We're going to start with this Olay Henriksen Vitamin C Serum. And this is the Truth Serum. It comes out as kind of this jelly texture. So you can see that we're going to expect to see something that's a little bit more liquidy, but it's not as liquidy as water, yet it is not as full gelling as something like a lotion would be. And when we smell it, it does smell like vitamin C. It smells like oranges, but it's not a perfume bomb, okay? So let's keep that in mind when we actually look at some of the ingredients. When we turn this around, the very first ingredient, again listed by order of concentration, happens to be water. This is to be expected. Then we have glycerin, again a hydrator, humectant. Then we have Olay 20. This is a surfactant. This is something that helps to bind more waters and oils together or combine ingredients that don't normally want to be together, a surfactant. Then we have our first vitamin C, sodium ascorbyl phosphate. It's actually interesting. This product has 3 different forms of vitamin C. I don't know why they don't put that on the front. Oh, they do. Do they? true C blend complex. They don't say it's a triple complex, but it is. And you wouldn't even know what a good product it is until you turn it around. But we've also got some fragrance in here, so let's explore this. Again, after the sodium ascorbyl phosphate, which is your stabilized form of vitamin C, we have hydroxy cellulose. Now, hydroxyethyl cellulose. Yes, so this is actually, think of cellulose. Cellulose is what makes trees and plants actually stand up. Cellulose, there's a lot of that in celery, and it's kind of what gives plants their structure. Now, cellulose in kind of more of a liquid form like this does create a nice gelling effect. Now, the reason that that's really nice is because it is a more natural form. You're not relying on synthetic or, more questionable ingredients to kind of get this feel to the product. But with this, you can get a really nice, sticky, pliable kind of texture to a product. And normally, seeing as this product does have that consistency, I'm assuming that this is way above the 1% mark. But now this is where it gets interesting. The next ingredient after the hydroxyethyl cellulose is phenoxyethanol. Now remember, phenoxyethanol is this aromatic alcohol, but it acts as a preservative that is more quote unquote natural. It's really replaced a lot of parabens. There has been a lot of fear about parabens, so people put in phenoxyethanol instead, which I don't know if I totally agree with. Parabens may not be as dangerous as we thought. They are absorbed into our bodies, but they are broken down as well. And phenoxyethanol, it can cause redness, irritation, and rashes in sensitive skin. But it is considered a natural alternative. But remember, lead is natural. Doesn't mean you should go seek out lead and rust and things that could give you tetanus and start licking them. Remember, natural doesn't always mean better. But seeing as that this is the phenoxyethanol, I'm assuming that this is where the 1% line is. Again, it's invisible. We can't see it. But everything else under here, we've got some citric acid, we've got some glycols, we've got some PEGs, we've got dimethicone. And again, if this was really, really high in dimethicone, it would have a real makeup-y primer feel. And you saw that how that blended in. It really didn't. So I'm almost confident that this is where the 1% line is, and it's because of that phenoxyethanol that we're able to figure that out. Again, you could also look for other things such as certain alcohols, such as certain preservatives, such as certain extracts. Excuse me, I burped. But that is pretty much how we find it. Now, the last thing that I do want to mention here is that this does have fragrance. If you want me to do a video on whether or not this is a good product and do an ingredient deep dive, I'm happy to. But I also want you to use your nose. Sometimes people are worried that the fragrance is really high up on the list, but again, it might be under that 1% mark, and they just put it highest on the bottle so they can prevent their trade secret. Now, it does smell like oranges, but it does not smell like a complete fragrance bomb. Like if this smelled like, 60 grandmas in an old department store, then I would be concerned that the fragrance is way high up on that list. But I think that it's at a safe amount here. So again, if you want to deep dive on this product, let me know. But I'm pretty sure that we just debunked the 1% line. Now let's go on to this one. This is from The Ordinary. This is the AHA 30% and BHA 2% peeling solution. Now this is also special because they are telling us right on the front, they're being super honest, open, and transparent about those ingredients. But let's not just take their word, let's fact check them. When we turn this over, we can see that the very first ingredient is glycolic acid. Now they're saying that this is 30% glycolic acid, not 40%. So seeing as glycolic acid is literally the first off, ooh baby, this is going to burn, and it does. It's a beautiful purple. I love this stuff. If you haven't tried this, this is literally an esthetician in your bathroom. Okay, but we also know that this glycolic way up there, it means that everything else in this product is going to be under 30%, at 30% or less. So after the glycolic acid, we do have water. We also have Aloe Barbados leaf water, so again, aloe vera. And again, these are normally seen pretty high up in the list. And seeing as this is a little bit of a jelly product, but it is still a liquid, I'm honestly not super surprised. You see how that kind of comes out a little bit gelatinous? So it's not like a complete watery runoff, but it has a little bit of that texture. The next thing that we have is sodium hydroxide. So this is basically lye. Very dangerous if you use it on its own. But sodium hydroxide, when combined with other ingredients, helps, it's used in soap making, and it's actually dissolved into the point that there is none left over. So this also tells me that this product formulation comes in a multiple step process. Imagine a product being created in layers, just the way you would bake a cake. You mix the dry ingredients first, then the wet ingredients. They do that in cosmetic manufacturing as well. And you could have up to 17 to 20 different steps, depending on how complex your formula is, which they're probably gonna charge you an arm and a leg for and sell you on a bunch of upsells, but like, don't listen. But essentially, this would be a really dangerous ingredient on its own. It denatures proteins in the skin, which basically means burns, blisters, horrifying things would happen. But again, because it's gone through this chemical transformation, this chemical process, it is safe. So just putting that out there. Again, I could see this being higher up on the list. Sodium hydroxide, we don't know what level it was being used before it was added into the final steps. So this one does get a little bit tricky. But remember that we have the BHA here on the front that says 2%, and we haven't hit the BHA yet. So we know that we're still probably above that 1% line. So again, you got to reverse engineer those bottles. Next, we're seeing some Sativa Extract. Now, Sativa Extract comes from cannabis. Our body has an endocannabinoid system, by the way, and CBD oil is all of the hype right now. This happens to be an extract, not the oil. I think at the bottom we might see a little bit more of this stuff. No, we don't. Anyways, it's all the hype, and if you want a video on it, I'm happy to do it. But this is an extract that might calm the skin, give some benefits, etc. And I like the fact that it seems to be above this 1%. Then we have propanediol. So this propanediol is essentially a replacement for vegetable glycerin. Again, it kind of gives this feel to a product. And if you look here, I could see that this has a higher amount of propanediol, or I would assume that it does because of the way that this is coming off in kind of a more jelly, rather than just if this was glycolic acid, water, and aloe vera, this would be like straight up liquid. So let's continue down this ingredients list. This is where we start to hit the salicylic acid. So before the salicylic acid, we have cocamidopropyl dimethylamine. So this is interesting because on its own, this would be a surfactant, or it would be a fragrance. I would say it's a surfactant on its own. It could also help to change a couple of things in the products, but seeing as it's right next to salicylic acid, I actually happen to know that there's a patent for this, and it's been used in other products as well. Basically, when this cocamidopropyl diethylamine is mixed with salicylic acid, it helps to stabilize the salicylic acid. Remember, that's our BHA. So this makes sure that the product is actually having the potency to work on your skin and a delivery system that is going to get it to where it needs to go within the layers of the skin. Also, we see that a lot of the ingredients here are water. AHA acids are water soluble, but BHA acids are fat soluble. So the reason that this ingredient is in here above the salicylic acid is to make this work within a majority water-based formula. So again, still above that 1% mark. Then again, the salicylic acid, that's great. Then we have potassium citrate. Now this is essentially your vitamin C. This is potassium citrate, it's a salt. And seeing as right underneath that we have the lactic acid, tartaric acid, I can't speak today, citric acid, panthenol, sodium hyaluronate cross polymer, this is kind of where I'm assuming this 2%, this 1% line is. And the reason why is because they're touting 30% AHA, but they have all of these other AHA acids down the list. I would assume that these are less because A, they're expensive, and B, if you had high amounts of each of these AHA acids, this would be more than 30%. So I'm assuming that right around here is where we are seeing this 1% line. And if we go just down a little bit more, we're seeing extracts. So again, fruit or leaf extracts, glycerin, some glycols, xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is a gelling agent. It's used in food, so you can kind of tell from there. But then we have, look at this, more than half of the ingredients are below that perceived 1% line. And for the Henriksen one, again, I would say more than 80% of the ingredients are underneath that 1% line. So now that we know this, we also kind of have to test it. We have to say, okay, What does the smell like? Do we think that there is a lot of scent in there or a lot of perfume in there? It looks like I cut myself in the woods. You can kind of look at the texture, kind of have to be a scientist in your bathroom or a chemist in your kitchen and try to figure it out. And I really want you to feel the product so you can kind of get a handle for that and start to recognize these ingredients. Now, I want to make a distinction. Just because something is at a low percent doesn't mean it's ineffective. Most acne products or most benzoyl peroxide products have benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid at 2.5% and below. So those are still really powerful. You know that benzoyl peroxide can stain your sheets and all of the clothes that you own at only 2.5%. Just because an ingredient is low on the list doesn't mean that it's not potent. It just means that it's low on the list. And this is how you figure it out. If you want another deep dive video, let me know which one, post in the comments. And if you want a video on how I like to read my skincare labels, you can watch it here. More skincare is right here if you want to watch these playlists, and I can't wait to see you in this next video. Love you guys. Bye.